The orbital transport slowed as Earth came into full view, its swirling clouds and bright blue oceans casting shifting light through the wide observation window. Zirek's antennae twitched uneasily. The planet rotated below like a chaotic jewel. Beautiful, yes, but restless. From this altitude, it already looked unpredictable. "This cannot be accurate," Ketra said flatly, her golden eyes narrowing. "There are 14 active storm systems, simultaneously." "That is normal for this region," answered the human pilot with a grin. "Actually, kind of a calm day." Ketra said nothing. Her tail flicked once, then curled tightly behind her. Tun pressed against the window with wide, glistening eyes. "It's alive. The entire planet looks alive. Even the oceans are moving in patterns I can't model." Zirek was scanning environmental data from the incoming feed, cross-referencing climate variability with recorded species diversity. He paused. "This world breaks several standard stability indexes," he muttered. "Volcanic activity, radiation levels, microbial mutation rates, atmospheric pressure fluctuations." The human pilot chuckled. "Don't worry. You'll get used to it. Just don't touch anything unless your instructor says so." They landed at Terran Institute of Planetary Studies, built on the edge of the Andes Mountains. The platform shuddered slightly underfoot, an unsettling reminder that Earth's tectonic plates were constantly on the move. As the students disembarked, they were greeted by warm sunlight, biting wind, and the scent of distant wildflowers. It was sensory overload. The temperature shifted rapidly with the breeze. The sky above them was a strange, impossible blue, and the clouds moved with aggressive speed. Somewhere in the distance, something screeched, a sound halfway between a song and a threat. "I think that bird just tried to stare me down," Tun whispered. He was referring to a curious-looking condor circling above. Dr. Maria Alvarez, their program coordinator, stepped forward and smiled. "Welcome to Earth, the original school of hard knocks. You'll love it here, eventually." Zirek stepped forward, his translator clicking softly. "We are honored to begin. However, we have heard much of this term, deathworld. Is it exaggerated for cultural effect?" Dr. Alvarez raised an eyebrow. "Not really. But we don't mean it in the grim sense. You'll see." The students were escorted into the orientation dome, where murals displayed everything from ancient human cave art to images of the Voyager probes leaving the solar system. Ketra studied one depiction closely. It showed humans building cities in deserts, climbing frozen peaks, and sailing into storms. All smiles, all joyfully reckless. Dr. Alvarez gave a short speech. "Some of you may be wondering what kind of planet you've landed on. Yes, Earth has challenges. Our biosphere is intense, our weather is moody, and even our plants occasionally have attitude. But we're still here. That's kind of the point." Ketra leaned toward Zirek. "They speak as if their survival is a badge." Zirek responded, not uncannily. "Perhaps on this planet it is." Outside, the wind howled again, rattling the dome. Tun watched a tree bend under the gust, then spring upright, as if nothing had happened, a world that didn't yield easily. This was going to be different. The next morning began with alarms, not emergency alarms, but the Earth kind. A cacophony of bird calls, buzzing insects, and something that sounded disturbingly like mechanical laughter filled the air outside the dormitory. Tun emerged from his sleeping capsule bleary-eyed and confused. "Is this a drill?" He asked no one in particular. "It's sunrise," Zirek replied calmly, already taking readings on the local biosphere. "Earth appears to celebrate every morning with unsolicited noise." Ketra stepped out last, irritated and wrapped in a protective cloak. The temperature dropped 10 degrees since midnight. No warning. No adjustment systems. How is this a regulated environment? The answer came quickly when a human student jogged past wearing only shorts and a tank top, breathing steam into the cold air. He waved. "Morning. Watch out for the goose near the fountain. It's territorial." Before they could respond, A large, honking bird sprinted across the grass, flapping its wings and charging at another group of students. No one seemed concerned. Tun blinked. That was a defensive maneuver. "It's a goose," came the reply from a passing human. "They do that." Katran narrowed her eyes. "They allow unpredictable avians to roam the educational compound." Their first orientation tour was led by Professor Grant, an ecologist who seemed entirely unfazed by Earth's reputation. He walked with a relaxed gait, pointing out native flora and fauna like they were old friends. "These trees are eucalyptus," he said, tapping one gently. "Highly flammable. Don't light a fire anywhere near them. Over there, we've got a colony of ants that can dissolve bone if provoked. Pretty rare, though." Zurich made a note in his tablet. "Humans appear to live in continuous proximity to biologically dangerous elements without defensive infrastructure, confidence, or oversight." As they walked through a botanical enclosure, the group paused at a fence. Behind it sat a solitary animal with long ears and powerful hind legs. "That," Professor Grant said, "is a kangaroo. Herbivore. Don't let that fool you. It can kick hard enough to rupture bone." Ketra glanced at the creature. It blinked at her. She blinked back. "Does it require restraint?" "No," the professor said, smiling. "This one's a rescue. Pretty chill." Tun leaned over and whispered to Zurich, "On my world, the most dangerous predator was 3 centimeters long and lived in a sealed crater. Here, they let monsters nap near footpaths." Zurich nodded without looking up. Earth does not recognize the difference between wildlife and weaponry. Later that day, they stopped by the student commons, where humans gathered around open flames, cooking various meats. A game of something called tackle football was happening nearby. It involved full-body collisions and no small amount of shouting. Katre observed quietly. Their recreation mimics combat. Dr. Alvarez rejoined them near the observation bench. "So," she said casually, getting a sense of why Earth gets its nickname. Katre crossed her arms. "It's not a death world. It's a contradiction. They smile while surviving." Dr. Alvarez laughed. "Exactly." The wind picked up again. Overhead, clouds gathered rapidly. Somewhere nearby, thunder rumbled low and deep. Professor Grant checked the horizon and grinned. "Looks like a storm's coming in." You're about to see Earth in one of her moods. 3 days later, the students found themselves boarding a tilt-wing transport bound for Earth's northeastern continent. Destination: the Australian Wilderness Reserve. It was part of their Biosphere Immersion module, and despite their growing concerns, participation was mandatory. "Why is it called a reserve?" Katra asked as the shuttle dipped below the clouds. "Because we reserve it," said their human guide, Ranger Ellis, with a grin. "From people. We try not to mess with it too much. Nature does its own thing here." From the window, the land looked vast and dry, but full of strange color. Red earth, tangled green brush, and patches of shadow that moved in ways Zurek didn't like. Their descent was smooth, but as they disembarked, a dry wind hit them like a furnace. Tun immediately reached for his hydration pack. "This place evaporates moisture faster than I can replace it." "Exactly," said Ranger Ellis. "That's the desert's way of saying hello." The trek began with a winding trail through bushland that seemed peaceful enough at first. Birds chirped overhead. Small mammals darted through the underbrush. But within the hour, reality shifted. "Hold still," Ellis said suddenly, holding up a hand. "Snake." Ketra froze mid-step. Zurich scanned the area and spotted the creature, curled beside a sun-warmed rock, its scales nearly invisible against the ground. It was watching them. "Is it venomous?" Katra asked. "Extremely," Ellis answered cheerfully, "but respectful. Don't bother it, and you'll be fine." They stepped around it carefully. Farther down the trail, a rustling noise drew Tun's attention. He leaned toward a tree, just as Ellis shouted, "No, back away. That's a funnel-web spider nest." Tun reeled back in horror. That was a nest. I thought it was a hole. It's both, Zurich said, examining it from a safer distance. A hole with purpose. Even Quatre was growing quiet. The plants here weren't just resilient. They looked aggressive. Spines, thorns, bark that flaked into irritants. Every part of the landscape seemed designed to discourage casual contact. At midday, they paused beside a river. The water was low, but cool. The moment seemed calm, until a ripple in the water became a flash of movement. A massive reptile surged from the edge, jaws snapping. "Croc!" Ellis shouted. "Back up, slow and steady." The alien students obeyed instinctively. The crocodile hissed once, then slid back into the water like a shadow melting into the river. Catra's pulse was visible beneath her skin. This planet is actively trying to reduce its own population. Ellis handed her a drink pouch. "Nah, you just have to know the rules. Earth isn't trying to harm you. It just doesn't play favorites." Back at camp that night, the group sat under a blanket of unfamiliar stars. Zurich looked up from his notes. This planet has more documented species capable of delivering lethal force than most war zones. And yet, Tun added, staring into the fire, the humans live here. Not just survive. Thrive. Ketra didn't speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was quiet. On my world, danger was something we erased. Here, they made it part of their identity. The fire crackled. In the darkness beyond, something howled. Tomorrow, they would go deeper. Back at the Terran Institute, the alien students returned from the outback with sore limbs, new caution, and far more respect for the wilderness. Catra, once dismissive, no longer questioned the term deathworld. She had begun studying the local fauna with the alertness of a soldier. Their next module was focused on Earth's history, but instead of museums or archives, the human instructors led them into a circular chamber lit by holographic projectors. The walls curved like a planetarium dome, and when the lights dimmed, Earth's ancient past came alive around them. "Welcome," said Professor Nkosi, a planetary historian. "Today, we cover the 5 mass extinction events." Yes, 5. Earth has ended most of its dominant species multiple times. The aliens exchanged silent glances. The first hologram showed oceans thick with strange fish and trilobites. Then came a massive volcanic eruption. Ash clouds darkened the virtual sky, oceans acidified, and nearly all life vanished. Ordovician extinction, the professor explained. It wiped out 85% of marine species. Earth did not flinch. More timelines unfolded. An asteroid slammed into the Yucatan Peninsula, launching fire and debris across the globe. Dinosaurs, creatures so massive they made Tun shudder, fell and vanished. Then came ice ages, supervolcanoes, hypercanes, and continents tearing themselves apart. With each extinction, Nkosi said, Earth reset the board. It offered no protection. No fairness, only a new challenge. Zurich, overwhelmed, raised one hand. And humans, when did your kind appear in this cycle of catastrophes? Nikosis smiled faintly. Late. We emerged after the last major extinction, but we've had plenty of smaller ones. Another series of images showed plagues, wars, famines, meteor strikes, solar flares, and climate shifts. Humanity survived each, sometimes barely. You see, Nkosi continued, we weren't shaped by peace. We were tempered by chaos. That's what forged our adaptability. Every time the world turned on us, we changed, faster than anything else could. Ketra sat forward. Why not build your world to be stable, controlled, safe? Because we couldn't, said the professor simply. This planet doesn't allow it. Earth is not a gentle tutor. It throws you into the fire and lets you decide whether to rise or vanish. The projector shifted to show early humans huddled in caves, then building fires, carving tools, painting on stone walls. The scenes moved faster. Villages, cities, satellites, rockets. Triumph stacked on tragedy. Victory pulled from disaster. Zurich watched quietly. So survival here was not about domination. It was about adaptation. Exactly, Nkosi said. Here, the survivors weren't the strongest or the fastest. They were the most determined. The ones who refused to give up. Tun whispered, "That explains their eyes. The way they look at storms." Ketra glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "They don't fear them," he said. "They study them. Walk into them. As if they belong there." As the lights rose, the alien students remained silent for a moment. Earth was not a world of monsters in danger for its own sake. It was a world that demanded transformation. And humanity, against all odds, had answered. Outside, thunder echoed again in the distance. No one flinched this time. The next assignment was different. Less academic, more personal. Dr. Alvarez explained it during the morning briefing with her usual calm smile. "For this unit, you'll each interview a human elder. Not a historian, not a professor. Just someone who's lived through things. Ask them about survival. Ask them what shaped them." Ketra raised a hand. "Is this a test of emotional analysis?" "No," Alvarez replied. "It's a lesson in perspective." The alien students scattered across the city in assigned pairs. Tun was paired with an elderly woman named Eliza living near the coastline. She greeted him at her modest home with tea and a smile. "You're the water one, aren't you?" she asked, motioning him in. "I am aquatic-based, yes," Tun replied. She laughed, not unkindly. "Good. You'll appreciate the ocean stories." Eliza's tale unfolded like waves, gently at first, then building with quiet power. She had been 10 years old when the tsunami hit. Her village was torn away overnight, and she had survived by clinging to a refrigerator door that floated into the mangroves. "I lost everything," she said, pouring more tea. "Family. Home. But I found other survivors. We shared food, sang to keep from losing hope. We didn't wait for help. We became the help." Tun sat in silence, feeling the depth of her calm. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She was solid. "That experience would have shattered most sentient minds," he said softly. She shrugged. "Maybe. But what else do? You keep moving." Elsewhere, Zurich interviewed a one-armed engineer named Malik who had worked in extreme environments, from Arctic drilling sites to collapsed tunnels under cities. "We didn't have the best tech," Malik said. "Sometimes no tech at all. But people figure things out. I once built a rescue rig out of salvaged car parts and garden hoses." Zurich recorded every detail, fascinated. Improvisation under failure conditions is standard. Malik grinned. "On Earth, it's a life skill." Ketra met with an old soldier named Lena. She had lived through 2 major wars and still tended a community garden in the city. Her stories were filled with grit, evacuating villages under fire, operating with no supplies, helping civilians rebuild while injured. "What kept you going?" Ketra asked. Lena thought for a moment. "We made each other laugh. We told stupid stories. We sang songs from before the war. You hold on to anything human. That's how you beat the dark." Ketra left the garden with a strange ache behind her ribs. Not pain, something deeper. That evening, the students gathered again under the glass roof of the common dome. The sky was dark, but Earth's moon was full and bright. They shared what they'd learned, quietly at first, then with growing awe. "These humans," Zurich said, "do not simply survive hardship. They reshape it into memory, into meaning." Tun nodded. "Even their scars become tools." Ketra stared up at the stars. "I thought struggle made species fragile, but here it makes them complete." None of them spoke for a long time. In the silence, they realized something vital. The true strength of Earth was not in its ecosystems or extremes. It was in its people. The following week, the students were led into one of Earth's most advanced research facilities, nestled deep within a forested canyon. It looked like a high-security vault, but the interior was filled not with weapons, but with labs brimming with controlled chaos, thunder simulators, pressure chambers, biosample vaults, and shelves of strangely preserved creatures that looked like science fiction monsters. Dr. Kapoor, their instructor for this unit, stood in a long hallway lined with containment units. Each one held a live specimen, nothing larger than a loaf of bread, but most of them looked either toxic, armored, or ready to explode. "This," he said with a smile, "is the Earth Hazard Research Division. We don't just live with danger, we study it, control it. Sometimes we even learn from it." Zurich stepped forward cautiously, reading the labels. Cone snail, blue-ringed octopus, stonefish. These are all lethal. Impressively so, Kapoor said, but beautiful too. And their venom has inspired treatments for pain and cancer. Earth's threats aren't just obstacles, they're opportunities. Katre approached a transparent cylinder where bacteria swirled in neon fluid. This strain mutates every 12 hours. Yes, Kapoor said. And that's why it's a model for evolutionary research. We use it to simulate pandemics and vaccine development. Tun looked visibly nervous as they passed through a high-humidity chamber where fungus samples thrived in sealed environments. This entire wing could collapse a lesser biosphere. Dr. Kapoor nodded. And that's why it's isolated. Earth's greatest threats also teach us how to protect others. We've become experts at surviving what most species never encounter. He gestured for them to follow. They entered a room where a massive machine simulated atmospheric conditions from Earth's worst recorded superstorms. The roar of wind and lightning was deafening through the glass walls. "This is the Storm Forge," he said. "We recreate hurricanes and test architecture against them." Ketra's eyes widened. "You replicate your own disasters on purpose." "Of course. If we understand the pattern, we reduce the damage. It's the same for volcanoes, floods, even meteor strikes." Zurek took notes rapidly. No species we've studied invests this much into studying its own planet's aggression. You treat nature like an opponent, not an environment. Kapoor shook his head gently. "Not an opponent, a partner that doesn't coddle us. You don't grow by hiding from the storm. You grow by learning to walk through it." In the next room, a video feed played footage from Earth's space missions, humans launching from a blue and green planet, stepping onto the moon, building habitats in orbit, all despite, or perhaps because of, the world they came from. "This planet teaches pain," Kapoor said, "but it also teaches preparation, resourcefulness, grit. Every human technology that left this world was shaped by its demands." The students stood in silence. "I begin to understand now," Katra murmured. "Earth does not give safety. It gives challenge. And that is a kind of gift." Outside, rain began to fall again, soft at first, then heavier. The humans walked in it with umbrellas or none at all. No one ran. And the students, for the first time, didn't see madness in it. They saw resilience. The last phase of the program took the students to a quiet, rural town that had once been flattened by a massive earthquake. That was nearly 40 years ago. Now it was thriving. Homes rebuilt, gardens blooming, children playing in streets that had once been broken apart by shifting earth. Katra stepped off the shuttle and scanned the rebuilt town square. This settlement was destroyed. "I've seen the satellite records." "And rebuilt," said Dr. Alvarez, who accompanied them for this final module. "Not by outsiders, by the people who lived here." Tun looked around, confused. But why stay? They had every reason to leave. "There are safer places." Alvarez smiled. "Safer, yes, but not home." Their guide in the town was a middle-aged man named Matteo. His limp told part of his story, and the rest came slowly as they walked through the rebuilt school, the restored library, and the open-air community hall made from salvaged wood and steel. I was 12 when the quake hit, Matteo said. It felt like the planet was trying to shake us off. Everything fell. But what came next was different. People didn't wait. We dug with bare hands, carried what we could, helped strangers first, and cried later. Zurich, recording everything, asked, "What drove such unity?" "We had nothing else," Matteo said simply, "except each other. You don't quit when you still have people worth fighting for." Later, in a quiet field near the edge of town, they came upon a stone wall covered in names. "What is this?" Katra asked. "A memory wall," Matteo said. "Everyone who didn't make it. We add flowers every year. We remember them, not as victims, but as part of the reason we kept going." Tun stared at the names. Most species would have built this into a warning, a message to never return. "We did the opposite," Matteo said. "We came back, stronger." They returned to the community hall where a celebration was beginning. Food, music, laughter. The town had heard of the alien visitors and welcomed them like neighbors, not observers. Children asked to see Katra's data tablet. Elders showed Zurich how to play a local drum rhythm. One elderly woman grabbed Tun's hand and taught him to dance. That night, Katra sat alone near a small garden lit by lanterns. Dr. Alvarez joined her quietly. "You've seen our world now," Alvarez said. "You've seen the fire and the floods, the beasts and the storms. What do you think?" Katre was silent for a moment. Then she replied, "It's worse than the reports said. And more beautiful." Alvarez nodded. "And the people? They're broken," Katra said. "But not shattered. Like tempered metal. Stronger where the cracks once were." "Exactly," Alvarez said. "We don't survive because Earth is kind. We survive because we don't stop, even when we should." A breeze stirred the lantern flames. For the first time, Katra didn't brace against it. She closed her eyes and let it pass. The final debrief took place in the Terran Institute's orbital annex, a quiet observation deck that floated just above Earth's atmosphere. The stars were sharp and brilliant outside the viewing panels, but it was the planet below that held their attention. Blue oceans, green continents, swirls of cloud, and beneath it all, a world that had challenged them in ways they never anticipated. Katra, Zurich, and Tun stood in their formal attire, their field uniforms packed away. The training cycle was complete, and yet none of them felt quite ready to leave. Dr. Alvarez joined them, holding a tablet with their performance summaries. "You all passed," she said with a small smile. "Not just academically. You learned something we can't teach with words." Zurich tilted his head. "It is difficult to explain. There's a logic to this planet's chaos, but it's not the kind we're used to." Alvarez nodded. "You've begun to understand what most off-worlders never do. That Earth is not simply dangerous, it's transformative." Tun stepped forward and tapped the glass. "When I first saw this planet, I thought it was sick, unstable. Now, I see it differently. It's wild, yes, but alive in a way no simulation can reproduce." Katra spoke next. Her voice was steady but changed, like someone who had let go of old certainty. "You didn't build walls around danger. You studied it. You lived beside it. You built cultures around surviving it. That kind of resilience, it's rare." She looked down at the Earth. "You call it a death world, but that's not quite right. It's a proving ground. And your species, your people, rose to meet it." Alvarez turned to them. "So, what will you say when you return to your homeworlds? When others ask what makes Earth so different?" Zurich thought for a moment. Then he said, "I'll tell them this. Earth is not the most dangerous planet because of its storms, or beasts, or plagues. It's because everything on that world fights to live. Everything." Tun added, "And humanity. They learn to do more than survive it. They turned that fight into progress, into art, into meaning. Ketra looked up toward the stars, then back at Earth. I used to believe strength came from avoiding pain. Now I understand. True strength is forged in the fire. And Earth burns, but it also teaches. They were quiet after that. The Earth continued its slow spin below them, indifferent to the conversation. Indifferent, but not unwelcoming. As the transport arrived to return them to the galactic exchange, Ketra paused at the airlock. She looked back one final time. I used to wonder why humans walked into storms, she said softly. Now I know. It's not because they're reckless. It's because they've learned they can walk out again. The hatch closed behind them. The stars stretched, and the Earth shrank to a blue and white marble behind the departing ship. And somewhere far below, the wind moved through wild trees, waves crashed against ancient rocks, and people, resilient and relentless, kept going. As they always had, as they always would.